Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Indie Hangout. I am Neumatix. You may know me over on YouTube or over on Twitch if you add an extra X at the end. I am, of course, joined by my amazing co-hosts, Maz and Kronos. What's up, guys?
What's going on, guys? Maz from Maztech Gaming. Maztech Gaming over on YouTube, Maztech_Gaming, VODs on YouTube, and Maztech_Gaming on Twitch.
How's it going, everybody? Kronos here. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube at OSOKKronos.
All right, guys, we made it. Episode 20. Wow.
It's crazy.
It's crazy, man. For how long we've been doing this, but it really feels like just yesterday we started recording, so it's awesome. We are on episode 20, and we're going to be talking about some pretty cool stuff. But I want to let our listeners know if I sound a little raspy at all, I hope the editing software goes and takes a lot of that out. But I am getting over a cold, and it sucks. You know, obviously it's fall. Bear with me. But like I said, hopefully the magic of the editing software we have fixes all that, along with all the other things. But other than that, I hope that you guys have been paying attention over in Discord when we're throwing some cool things out in there, some information, what's going on in the indie scene. And if you want to join in on the Discord that we have for this podcast, go ahead and go into the About section wherever you find this podcast. Click on the link and join us in there. We'd love to have you in there to join in on the discussions. So, guys, I know the main topic of today is going to be revolving around retro revivals, right? You know, the old revivals of the old games we love, kind of nostalgia effects, driving the force behind indies in general that are releasing today, and probably the ones that have the most connections to the old games that we love are the ones that are doing the best. But before we get into that, I think it'd be cool to talk a little bit about our last episode, because it's been a week since then, and we had been talking about all the hype behind the new games coming out for the month of September, this month. And one of the games that released last week on September 4th was Hollow Knight Silksong. And believe it or not, we had been talking about that game because it had prompted a lot of indie devs to actually postpone their game. They delayed their game on purpose because of this release. And in the beginning, I didn't really think there was anything of it. I was like, I thought it was a big game. I didn't realize how big it was until the three of us kind of figured out together what happened when it released. So I had heard, and I'll let Kronos continue after this because he piped in with some more information, but I had heard that Silksong, Hollow Knight Silksong, had caused Steam to actually crash. That is insane. I can't remember the last time a game caused Steam to crash with how much excitement and anticipation behind a game releasing. It's insane. I mean, I don't know. We had talked about it because it's coming out for free on Game Pass. And so the three of us had already been like, yeah, we'll probably play it on Game Pass. But the fact that it had that many downloads, that many people trying to buy it to play it on Steam is insane. Oh, and what did you hear, Kronos? What to add on to that?
So I actually heard that, the Nintendo eShop crashed completely also, just like Steam did, and that the Microsoft Store and the PlayStation Store were experiencing major difficulties keeping their functions going with all the traffic for that game.
Holy cow, dude. Did you guys think something like that would happen over an indie game? Not trying to downplay it at all, but holy crap.
Yeah, I anticipated that. Well, I mean, I wasn't like not actively thinking, oh, you know what, it's gonna crash Steam. Oh, I just know it. I didn't anticipate that, but I'm not surprised by that, is what I mean. And but I mean, think about it this way: the game came out September 4th. There's a lot of buzz. In the first few hours, it had over 450,000 concurrent players on Steam. And so with that number, I mean, that's a lot of servers, and that's it's pretty nuts to think about that. And that many people on the store at the same time picking that copy up, it's pretty crazy. And I think it's the price as well. It's with these indie games, $20 isn't a lot. It really isn't. And it's easy to pick it up that way. And yeah, you're going to get it on Game Pass. You can play it on Game Pass as well, but you can own it pretty inexpensively as well. But I kind of feel like, and I might be wrong, but Steam is like the indie haven. That's where you go for indie games. That's like the number one place. And I could be well off base with that. I mean, it's probably the e-store with Nintendo as well. But at the same time, I'm not surprised to see, especially with all these companies being like, well, we're going to push back our release date. They knew something was coming. And look what happened.
Yeah, look how smart of a move that was, that it caused such a fuss to crash two different platforms, and then the other two main ones besides, I assume it probably released on Epic and all that, the Epic store, but I didn't check. But the fact that it caused those other ones to have like bad experiences for users trying to get on and everything, that's crazy. It's funny you brought up price too. So besides the fact that that game released and caused issues for platforms, and by the way, quick math, what, $20 a game, say everyone bought the game for $20 times 450,000 concurrent players, that's $9 million a game made day one if we're just basing it off of that. That's
Wild.
so
That's
crazy.
a lot of money.
Dude, it's, you imagine. See, this is before we get into the next section here. Like, this is one of those times where you sit back and you say, as an indie dev, right? If it took you 7 years to make the game, that was well worth it. It was well worth the time it took to make to release. Obviously, there's more factors in it, with it being the second game in the franchise. So, but just in general, it's funny thinking back and stuff like that. But what I was going to get into now, though, is pricing. So, Maz, you brought up that the game, it's nothing really. It's $20. That's only $5
be.
more. $5 more than most games, most indie games, right? And we had actually factored in with inflation that if it were back when the first Hollow Knight released, it would be the same amount, that $15 range, and with inflation now it's $20. So it makes sense. It all makes sense. I thought it'd be funny to bring up. I know it's gonna like rile Maz up.
I don't know what you're talking about.
It did for me as well, man, because like I saw it, I'm like, you gotta be kidding me, right? I read a article from IGN about Hollow Knight Silksong, and it's titled, "Indie developers are worried Silksong's $20 price tag will make it harder to price their games." And the quote under it goes, "Some kind of games are going to get priced out of existence." So, knowing what this is about, Maz, before we get into our main topic of this podcast, I don't know, I mean, like, here, I'll bring up some points from, and these are developers that I've never heard of in the first place. Maybe some of the listeners will be able to pick them out, but from posts over on X and also threads on Instagram or Blue Sky, there's some indie devs. So this comes from a number of threads on social media. In one Blue Sky thread, Unbeatable director RJ Lake says that Silksong should cost $40. And I'm not even joking, but Lake isn't upset at Team Cherry for charging $20. That's their prerogative, but it will have an impact on gaming audience. Millions of people will probably buy Silksong on day one, and it was a game that had a very low budget, because the budget is these devs worked on it without direct pay for however long they wanted to do that. Lake writes, it had a "these devs are independently wealthy" budget of effectively $0. They can price however low they want. As a result, their return on investment is infinite, no matter what they do. But by charging such a low amount, they are causing lizard brain signals to fire off saying, "This kind of game is worth $20. You should expect the same game. Should expect this game for $20. So he's trying to relate, saying, well, Silksong's $20. So if I play a game that doesn't meet my expectations, then I'm going to complain that it's too expensive if it's more than $20. So based off of that little snippet from this guy, RJ Lake, from, what was that, Unbeatable, a director behind Unbeatable. How do you feel about that, man?
Well, I mean, he's a musical artist and video game composer for Unbeatable, which is awesome.
Okay.
And here's the thing is, I get what he's saying. It goes back to what I think I mentioned it myself. If they decided they wanted to charge $60 for it, I think I said it last week, 40 or $60. It's a $40 game. I think I said that verbatim. But if they wanted to charge $60 for it, they could get away with that because it's that popularity. But what does that tell you about the company? They're gouging people because they know that there's the value there. And value, we talked about that as well. What is valuable to you, Neumatix or Kronos, might not be as valuable to me. So you might feel compelled to spend $40 on that game. And here's my hot take on Hollow Knight on the whole. It's fun. It's a Metroidvania. It doesn't stand out for me. It's not an outlier. It's not that good as far as I'm concerned. And I'm not saying that isn't like it's not a good game. It's like Chick-fil-A. Everybody goes to Chick-fil-A. Why? Fast food chicken. But anytime you go through there, those lines are just full. Why? It's not that good. It's chicken. You know, it's nothing to write home to mama about is what I'm saying. And there are going to be a lot of people that disagree with what I'm saying. But this is an outlier game. It's got its popularity, and I'm not going to take anything from that. But the value is the value. And nobody can place a value on anything except the person making that purchase. It's just the long and short of it. However, we've talked about this ad nauseum episodes ago. I think this actually goes back to episode 1. You're in the right wheelhouse for your ecosystem, he says. You know, this is the right wheelhouse. $20 is an appropriate price.
Yeah, man. No, I totally agree that every game is different depending on who you are and what you find value in it. And I understand what you're saying with like value, you know. Stardew is valuable to me and I would pay $60 for it, where it is not valuable to you or Kronos. You would look at it and be like, maybe if it's on sale for $15, I might grab it. You know, if it was the case of like, if it actually being like $60. So in general, and I understand, you know, coming from what this guy is trying to say, I understand his point to a certain degree. You know, he's trying to say, unfortunately, goes back to indie games in general, regardless of what anyone feels like games should be priced at. You know, the fact is the matter is that big indie games started getting in popularity when they were priced at $15. If they started to become really popular when they were at $25, people would think that the benchmark for indie games to buy is $25. So his concern I could see is that, okay, now people are thinking the benchmark is $20 for really, 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 really good indie games. So everyone's going to think that for any game that comes out, regardless of like its length or what kind of genre it is or whatnot. So I don't know. It's a tough subject when it comes to that. And I do understand its point. Like, how do you feel about what he said about, I'll give my opinion and then I'll ask how you guys feel about this too, is like his whole point of Hollow Knight released and we did the metrics on it and we pulled and it showed it being the top out of top 10. It was like the third most beloved game for indie games, right? Which means most likely it made a lot of money and was able to set Team Cherry up for this next game and probably be financially stable to do whatever they want. Like they could have just been like, no, we're not going to make another game. We're just going to go live off and travel or do whatever the hell they want with their life, right? But instead, these are like, no, this is our passion. It's what we want to do. We're going to make another game. And so he sees it as, oh, they could have spent however long they wanted the game and charged whatever they wanted because they're financially set and they didn't have to worry about if their game took a nosedive for the second one. And yeah, you can say that, but you wouldn't be worried about that if your first game or even your second game, whatever it is you released, did just that, where you were in this situation too. And that's kind of like what you're saying too, Maz. They could have, because of how wealthy they are, they could have just been like, yeah, we're going to gouge them anyway. So the first one did really well, made us millionaires. We're going to set this other one and we're going to price it at $40 because we can and make even more money. But no, they were like, no, it kind of shows the character of person they are by releasing their game for only $20 because they believe that's what their game is worth, even if it may technically be worth more in other people's eyes. And they're not willing to go out and try and gouge players for more because they're not greedy, you know? And I find that commendable. What do you guys think? How do you feel, Mez?
It's one of those things though where the way I think about it is if they he was saying like setting a precedent, right? And we talked about this ad nauseum. I think that, I don't know if this got cut off or not before, but we talked about this like from the beginning of our podcast, is that $15 to $20 range is like, that's the sweet spot. How does that affect the ecosystem if they come out and they say, well, we're very popular, we know what our product is worth, we're going to charge $40 for that? They're setting a standard, they're setting a precedent. Now, these companies, they put off their releases because they knew this was going to be a blockbuster. But these companies know where they stand when it comes to this game. But I feel like if Silk Song had come out and released at $40, then these other games would think, well, we can also charge $40 for our game. And that is how we get pushed into that realm of $40 to $50 to $60 indie games. And we're not there yet. We're simply not there.
How do you feel about it, Kronos?
So see, I'm taking it as a little bit different perspective on what he was trying to say. I see it like as if, it released as a $20 game, then people are going to be like, hey, if this game is $20, then it should be as good as Silk Song, They're going to start seeing it as like, if I can pay $20 and get this awesome game, then why am I going to pay, what is it? Car Wash Simulator should be just as good for $20.
Oh yeah, for sure. And I get that. I feel like that's exactly what he was trying to put forth, is that was his argument, is that so since Silk Song is such a big game, such a good game in many people's eyes, being priced at 20, what he called, which is kind of degrading, he says lizard brains are going to go off and say, oh, this puzzle game this guy released that he worked on for 5 years is not as long and not as good as Silk Song, so it should be worth $10, but he priced it at 20. This is ridiculous, I think that's what he was trying to say too. Yeah, I think he was the same way you're thinking is what he was trying to get across on that article from IGN.
You said lizard brains, though. That's like wildly insulting. Not you,
Yeah.
but he said that. And
Yeah.
that's not how we're supposed to be thinking. And that's why we think about, that's why I talk about value, right? It's not, I mean, I'm not buying Silk Song. You're not buying it. Kronos, you're not buying it. We talked about that the last episode. Nope. Why not? It's a great game, according to everybody, but you guys don't see the value. It's not that. If a Pokemon game comes out, it's $20. You all over that, Kronos?
Buying it. Oh yeah.
What if it comes
News
out
all over that.
Okay.
Oh,
Okay, guys.
Yeah, dude.
New game comes out, it's $100. New Pokemon games, $100. You're buying it. Why?
To play it.
But why are you going to pay $100 for it?
Because of the name and what it is.
You see the value in it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I don't really look at it as in, well, this ain't no Silk Song. It should be $10. No, $20 is fine. I expect to pay between $15 and $20 per game. The Precinct is a great game. It's not nearly as popular as Silk Song. It came out for $30. I'm not saying, hey, you know what? Well, that's stupid. That should have been like $10, $15. I saw the value in that and I got it. I don't see the value in Hollow Knight, Silk Song. But I also see the value in Game Pass and that I can play it on Game Pass. I don't want to say for free, but I can play it with my Game Pass subscription. I see the value in that. It's something I can play while I'm playing other games on that platform. But I see it as value. A lot of people are seeing it as, and I'm not saying that's the way you're looking at it, Kronos, or that you're just interpreting what he's saying, but to say lizard brain, that's a very like, I don't know, saying that people are sophomoric and not really all that intelligent to be able to see the difference between value and, comparing games. You can't compare games. You can't compare Tetris to Super Mario Brothers. They're different things, but they could be the same price. And you might buy both of them. You might buy one or the other, but you have to value them to purchase them.
Yeah. So here's another part of it before we get into more of the episode here. So another part of it goes to make it even worse, right? He goes, if enough of those lizard brain signals fire, some kinds of games with actual budgets to pay people who need to live are going to get priced out of existence unless they can get some kind of organic groundswell you can't plan for. So there's the other part of it is, so I don't know. I mean, we talk about this too, and I like what you put too, Maz, is that it's kind of checks and balances for the gaming community and the gaming ecosystem in general. You don't want a game like Silksong releasing that is in an indie game made by, I'm not even sure, a couple guys, maybe at least a team of 10. But this game's releasing, and if it released for $40, like you said, many indie developers who are bigger or even mid-tier would go and be like, okay, that's the new standard. And it would be up to the gamers, really, and the gaming ecosystem to fight back on that if they didn't think it was that shouldn't be the new norm. But instead, the other way is happening where these big developers are pricing their games low, $15 to $20, and keeping the checks and balances low so that these other indie devs can't escalate these prices through the roof. So I do like how the whole ecosystem with indie gaming is happening. They're all keeping each other in check, which is good, you know. But the other side, it's a fun argument just to talk about because the guy, besides him being degrading, and I absolutely think his argument is thrown out the window for the most part because of that. But the bits and pieces in there that make sense is like, you know, people that pay, you know, if you're a small studio of 10 people and you're having to pay everyone a living wage, if that's all they're doing, and if they don't have a part-time job, or if they don't have, like for me, I have a full-time job and I'm doing it on the side, then you got to worry about, all right, hopefully we can release this game, break even, or make some money off of it to pay all my guys so that we could possibly continue doing this. Because if it doesn't, then the studio's going under and we're gonna have to go elsewhere and just get, you know, either go independent on our own, each one of us, or whatever the case may be. Where he's seeing it as, like I said, Team Cherry being wealthy, not having to worry about that, and taking all the time they need. I think it's kind of a jealousy thing. It's like, it's almost like I'm mad because they can do it without worrying about a budget and I can't, you know?
Yeah, it definitely sounds like sour grapes to a certain extent. And just to clear that up, Team Cherry, this Hollow Knight Silk Song was made with a team of 3.
Holy crap, dude. I love it. That is awesome.
Only 3 people. That's crazy.
Absolutely. Well, and they had a 4th person that was a composer, but 3 people worked on the game, yes.
Yeah. So, but yeah, if anyone would like to, how about in the Discord for our listeners? I'll post a link to the IGN article just for funsies so you guys can look at it and read up on it if you're curious to a little bit more of what that person said. Or it's not just him. I just read off what he was saying, but there was a lot of talk from other indie devs, folks from Deck 13 and Red Squirrel Games and a couple other ones. So if you want to read in on that, be sure to jump in on the Discord. Like I said, in the About section, click the link and you'll get it in there. All right. But I think it's good for us to jump into what we really want to get into here, guys, which is the retro revival. So this episode will also be a bit of a mix of stuff we've probably talked about before, which is the whole retro scene being a big boost for games releasing now. Like, you know, we talk about Metrovanias, right? And what does that stem from? You know, Castlevania and Metroid. And we also have, of course, the farming simulators that are super popular from Harvest Moon and games like that. So when I talk about retro revivals, curious what games pop in your head right away if you're thinking a game that's been revived from the dead, or maybe a nostalgia game that you play that reminds you of a game you played when you were younger, maybe when you first started gaming. How about you, Miss?
We've talked about that before. Alex Kidd came out in 1986. Played it in 1986.
Yeah.
It was redone back in, I think, 2021. And also had that retro. There was a button you could push. You could play the retro game. I mean, it was like completely hand drawn and redone, but you could play the old 8-bit version from the Master System. That's one that comes to mind right off the bat. And one that's coming to mind also right off the bat now is there is a new game coming out. It's a 16-bit version of He-Man, Masters of the Universe. And I can't wait to get my hands on it. And that is just... that I'm really excited for that because it's got the voices, it's got the He-Man voice, like the music, and it also has like that retro feel to it, like old characters from the cartoon. I'm really looking forward to things like that. Those are kind of the first couple that come to mind like immediately.
Nice. How about you, Kronos?
Oh, well, it all plays back to a lot of the games I used to play, they have it redone, so I kind of don't have any indie games that I play that remind me of older games.
What are some of those? I'm assuming a lot of Pokemon, right?
Yeah, I played like a lot of Pokemon and stuff, but like, you know, like how we was talking to one day, like the Legend of the Dragoon for the PlayStation, and then another big game we played on the original Xbox, like I beat that game multiple times. It was called Alter Echo. It was a weird little game, but it was fun. And then you had another game that we played probably hundreds of hours, was called Cell Damage. But like, you know, they're off the wall. They were almost like indie games back then because they were just like small little, you know, I guess technically they would be considered indie games back then because they were just small teams that made them, and we played them a lot, but nobody's like tried to remake any of that stuff that I used to play.
Yeah. There's quite a bit, and it's funny because thinking about it, as I was thinking about mine, obviously everyone's already heard from me. Mine's, the any kind of farming simulator that's out there. It's giving me good vibes from Harvest Moon games that I played in the past. I remember there was a point before, Steam was around, and I was always thinking of like, man, I really wish they would come out with a brand new Harvest Moon game, like something more like to today's standards. And do you guys feel this way sometimes? I'll ask this question because I've asked myself like this. I've thought about this before. Is do you feel that sometimes the more retro the game is, the more appealing it is because it's simplified? Like I sometimes feel like games nowadays can get overcomplicated really quickly. It's got to have this extravagant crafting system. It's got to have this extravagant survival system. It's got to have an open world and amazing graphics and whatever it may be. And even for indie standards, a lot of indie games are trying to reach that. And we've talked about it in the past too, from prior episodes about indie games trying to meet the raised bar that's been done from other games. But I do find myself, whenever I find indie games that are almost more retro looking, more 16-bit style, more simplified, it almost draws me more towards them. Do you guys ever feel that way, or am I just alone in this?
Nah, I mean, I've played some of those games because they do, like you said, because they look older and just they feel like you're playing the older retro games. Uh, I played the demos and a couple here and there, but I can't think of any offhand. But I mean, yeah, it's definitely a point that will draw me in to make me like, oh, like check out the game more and see if it's something I actually want to play.
Yeah, because it's like, so I played a game not too long ago. I'm sure the listeners have heard me mention it before. It's called Elementalist, and it's not released yet. There was a demo for it. I played it for Steam Next Fest, and I loved it. It was really good. It kind of reminded me of Legend of Zelda in a way, the old school Game Boy games. And I think that's what got me like to even look at it in the first place. Like it's very simple. The mechanics are very straightforward. And I think that's of anything. Any of us playing these games, we find it obviously a lot easier to dive into when the mechanics are sound, when they feel like we've been there before. And that's how it felt for me with Elementalist. Playing that game was like reliving me playing The Legend of Zelda in a way. And it's funny also too thinking about it, Kronos, because I don't know if it's because people are afraid to get sued, but I think I've never seen personally a game like Pokemon redone and a way to be its own. Like Digimon had its time at some point, right? But it seems like they've kind of died out, obviously, compared to Pokemon. But I can't say that I've ever played a game that gave me the same feeling that Pokemon has ever done for me, nostalgia wise.
Yeah, I haven't either. Like I've played some of the games that are like they kind of like replicate a little bit of Pokemon in a way, but for the most part, none of them have nailed that. Like it feels like you're playing that style game.
Yeah, and it's almost like obviously you're playing regular Pokemon games. They get better and better over time as they come out. They get more polished. They get that modern polish, right? But obviously the things that we're looking for, and we had mentioned, we had all gone over that list of all the top games from indie developers were a lot of 2D style games. Did you find that surprising, Mass, with the popularity of indie games happening to be? I mean, look at Hollow Knight. Hollow Knight's a 2D game, and it went and crashed servers and stuff. Like, and some people I know I know a lot of people from your community even say that they don't even like games that are more that parallax style, top down, but a little camera angled off. It's not their thing, but I think a majority would say they do like that style. I like that style.
I like isometric. I think that's the one you're talking about, correct?
Oh,
Like
yeah, not parallax,
No,
isometric.
you're
Sorry.
fine. No, it's fine. Isometric is really actually I love that. I mean, precinct is I almost said parallax. The precinct is isometric. Fellbound isometric. No, that's one's top down. But there's a lot of. I mean, that is becoming a pretty popular genre because it keeps it 2D. It's like parallax, right? The 2Ds, the side scrollers, like Hollow Knight, have a parallax background to make it look 3D, but it is 2D. Same thing, the way that it's raised in an isometric, it's kind of top down, but at an angle. So it looks like some of that 2D art stands up off the ground. So it looks 3D. I think that's extremely popular.
Yeah, absolutely. So with the visuals, the sounds, obviously, I had mentioned the gameplay with mechanics, just feeling like you've been there before. Sounds, sound is something that we haven't talked about very much. And I think it's funny what old school games could do with their limitations compared to newer games. And it's almost, I find it very daunting thinking about when I go to ask my sound developer, because I'm not doing the sound myself for the game that I'm creating. I'm doing the sound effects, and I've thought about diving into doing music for my game, but there's no way. There's no way, man, because you think about you could probably think of a game off the top of your head and immediately start playing the music and that comes with it. That says something. That really correlated with the game, and it just helped you even form a bond with that game even more and made it maybe one of your favorites because of it. Like, whether it's and it can be, I think sometimes some games try too hard. I think I've heard some soundtracks from recent games. There was Fields of Mystria. It was like almost some of the soundtracks from that. They're really good, but it's almost too much. I don't know. It feels like some of this music belongs in a different game. It seems like it should be more 8-bitty. It should be, like it came from a Game Boy or something like that. So but all right, guys, I think it'd be good right now to go ahead and do a quick ad break. And when we get back, we're going to go ahead and discuss a bit more around the indie scene with this retro space and why indies are just dominating in it. We'll go into the polls and anything else that might come up in between right after this. Hey, Indie Hangout crew, loving the show? Help us spread the word by dropping a quick 5-star rating or review wherever you might be listening to this podcast. It takes just a second and helps more than you know. Thanks for being awesome. Now, back to the show. And welcome back to the Indie Hangout podcast with me, Neumatix, OSOKKronos, and Maztech Gaming.
I do have a question for you guys, though. When we talk about retro revivals, when it comes to these 2D games, these pixel art games, we find, and you had said it earlier yourself, New, is that, isn't it nice to take, do you think that's one of the perks of the retro, like, feeling games, like the retro revival, is the mechanics aren't there? Because we're always, as developers, I say it like I'm a developer, but we're always like, as developers, they're always trying to outdo each other with the graphics. Okay, the graphics are like, the graphics are the graphics of the graphics now. We can do really well with these different engines. We can do really well with, the animations. There's only so much you could do to outdo each other. So, okay, so how about the sound? So we start outdoing each other with the sound. Then we start getting live orchestras. I mean, think about some of these, these Elder Scrolls games. You think of Elder Scrolls, you think of Zelda, you think of a couple different other games that just like the soundtrack is like, oh my God, chef's kiss, right? And now, to your point, to getting into it, now, how do we outdo each other now? Well, now we're talking mechanics. Now we're talking accessibility. So we're making the game more and more complicated. So we come back and we go full circle. And we do this a lot as in society, in civilization. The flip phone comes out, the Nokia phone comes out. It's just a brick, right? This is like when cell phones got really popular. And then they came out with flip phones. And then we changed the landscape when the iPod came out. It's like, well, why don't we make the iPod an iPhone? Oh, there's the birth of smartphones. And then we get to the point where, like, you know what? We're always being tracked. We always have cookies where people are following us on GPS and everything like that. Let's go back to flip phones. So we kind of always come full circle with almost everything that we do in life. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, it seems that way.
Right. And so my question to you guys is then, when we have these these retro revival games, why do you think it always seems to come back to, because I do my indie game showcases, as you guys know, every week on my YouTube channel. And I'll tell you, I'll always say, hey, you know what? I'm feeling Zelda. Hey, I'm feeling Star Tropics. Hey, I'm feeling Chrono Trigger, Secret of Mana vibes. We were talking about Under the Island, which is a German created game. I did a showcase on that a few weeks back. And that was like eking Secret of Mana, or Chrono Trigger, really. Zelda, Star Tropics, like I just mentioned. Same thing with with Fellbound, one of the ones that I did. Gave me a little bit of a Zelda vibe mixed with some Soul Blazer. There's a lot. Just why do you think it is, though, that when we are doing retro revival games, it always seems to revolve around the classics?
Think for me, and this might be, it obviously pertains to probably a lot of people, but for me personally, it's definitely the nostalgia behind it because, like I said, I was playing Elementalist and I was like, oh, this game reminds me of Legend of Zelda. And it's funny sometimes when that happens because I think to myself, as I'm playing the game, and I'll be having a good time, and not that I'm thinking about it during the game, only at certain parts, but like after I'm done with my game session with that, I'll be looking at my Zelda games the next day. It's funny sometimes how that
Mhm.
happens. But yeah, I think you have obviously the way your brain works, it's that dopamine, as you always say, with the enjoying yourself with games, and your brain's constantly trying to get more of it. Well, if you experienced a good memory with a game back in the day and something else comes up that kind of reminds you of it, your brain goes, ooh, do this because we might get enjoyment out of it?
Sure. What about you, Kronos?
I see it as like, a lot of people are more always wanting to go back and like, well, kind of like New said, where you want to experience, the core memories and stuff of it. And it's like, well, I can't play this game anymore, and this game looks a lot like it. Maybe it's more, I can find some old school feeling memories by playing a different game since I don't have access to my older game anymore.
I get that for sure. I'm just wondering, is it deliberate? Go back a couple months now. Actually, go back to June. Good Lord, we've been at this for a while. We really have. Go back to
Yeah,
June,
man.
where we met with Ruffy and the Riverside developer. He said that he wasn't trying to be Mario 64, and he wasn't. But it doesn't matter if he was trying to or not, because those are some of the vibes that you get out of that. You think Mario 64, you think Banjo Kazooie, you think Crash. And here's the thing, there's a secret room in that game that gives a nod to all of those games: Paper Mario, Mario 64. So why do you think we do that? You had mentioned that both of you have like nostalgia, kind of getting back and getting that dopamine hit. But is it deliberately trying to be retro that way, or do you think just because all of like the big genres that we know of at this point back then is what makes it retro? Does that make sense? Does that question make sense? Is it like because we know what is retro, that's what makes it retro? Because you can't like really, can you create an original game that has a retro feel to it and actually have it be retro or actually feel nostalgic rather?
Think nowadays with how things are, because I think most people when they look at 2D games, they just automatically think retro. And I would love for our listeners to chime in on this as well. If they feel that way too, if most of them do feel that way, if they're, your typical gamer, that Fortnite player, is looking at 2D games and going like, oh man, that's old school. What is that? What was that made in 1920? Like I could just imagine it in my brain, someone doing that. But in general, I think that a game dev can make something modern and still make it feel retro or nostalgic in a way. And I also don't think, because even when I look at Hollow Knight, it kind of gives that vibe too, that old school side scroller in a way. But obviously, I know it's not. I know it's modern. I know it's the more modern way to make games when it comes to that style. But I don't know. It still gives off that vibe. And it's not that I've never actually played Metroid. I've never played Castlevania. I've never played those types of games. I've seen gameplay of them, and maybe that aids in my brain to automatically just link all of them together that way. But I think that comes with the modernness, And I also think, just kind of piggyback off this in a way, is most game developers creating games, indie devs in general, are creating the games that have pieces of the games they loved. And guess what? Most game devs, 'cause especially like around my age too, are thinking about the games that I'm thinking about the games I played when I was growing up, and the games that I'm making are definitely going to have those similar mechanics in them or the similar nostalgia feelings in them. At least I'm going to try. And I think that's also why most indie games coming out now have those feelings, is because a lot of indie devs are in the same boat as the player, but they're just the ones making the game instead of playing it, you know?
That's a really good point, man.
What about you, Kronos? Do you feel that, as Matt's point was, that nowadays games can be modern but still give that retro aspect to them?
For sure. Yeah, like as Matt said, going back to Ruffy, I mean, they even said that they wasn't trying to make a Paper Mario copy, but they wanted it to feel, because Pat said he grew up playing a lot of the retro games and stuff, and he wanted to make a retro feeling game, but he wanted to incorporate newer mechanics in it that hadn't been seen before, like the swap technique and stuff. So I could see why, and I think we talked about it before, is like too, with a lot of the devs, they see it as like, hey, this is a popular area, so they know if they make a game that's like a retro style game, they might be comfortable with it because they played a lot of them, but they also might feel a little more comfortable knowing that there's a good player base that revolves around those type of games. So you spend years developing a game, you're not just going to release it to probably nobody. You got a chance of actually people finding it because of the theme of the game.
Yeah. Something else I was thinking of, guys, is like, as you've brought up many times, that genre fusion, right? Coined by Mr. Maz himself.
There it
genre
is.
fusion. So, when I bring this, I'm just thinking about this too. Like, you had brought this up in the past, and obviously it seems like in every episode it's coming up more and more and more, right? And especially in the episode we talked about cozy games mashing with other genres that you wouldn't really think of. And I'm curious if those games, they just work, or they're just gonna work because they still have some kind of nostalgia backing to them. They still have some, especially even like 2D games, they're still gonna have some kind of retro roots to them. Because in general, like I just stated, like for me, I'm making a game, and it's really piecing a lot of my favorite games together that I know I can create on my own to the best of my ability. And isn't that what genre fusion is too? Like, someone's taking a little bit of this genre and a little bit of this, and they're mashing it together with the best of both worlds for mechanics. And it's like, is this really why it's just going to work? Because anyone who's played us, like I said, a cozy to horror, you would think they wouldn't mix, but we got a farming simulator by day being hunted by zombies and stuff by night, and people are interested in it. And it's like, is that because, like, for someone like me, would I still play that? Because like I played old school, Resident Evil, and then I played Harvest Moon, and it like in the brain, it's like, I enjoyed one of them, but would I enjoy both of them together? you know?
Yeah, I
I'm
mean that's just it. We're trying to mash it up. We're trying to mix it up. We're trying to spice it up. Because there's another thought that I'm having as we're having this discussion is like, isn't theoretically every game that comes out now and in the future retro inspired? Because how many different genres can you really have? I mean, we're going to discover things. I mean, you've got subgenres. You've got, over the years, you've got Souls-like games. You've got cozy games, which is really kind of inspired by Stardew. I mean, I'm with Yemi. Yemi the Ferret had mentioned that in his podcast as well, or in a conversation as well, that, just cozy has become just a subgenre based off of certain games. And it really has been just recently that's been thrown around. And recently being the last 5+ years. Nothing crazy. No, we're not decades into it or anything like that. But how can you really create more genres than what you've already had over the years? And we're going to find out, in the coming years, because we're always going to be innovating. But right now we're kind of outdoing each other with graphics. Like I said, evolving our graphics. We're kind of evolving our gameplay. We're evolving our sound and music and gameplay mechanics and accessibility, almost to the point where we're overcomplicating some games. But at the end of the day, everything has a game loop that is going to, at some point, cross over and be similar to something that you've already played. So wouldn't theoretically at some point every game eventually be retro inspired? Whether it's a AAA game, AA game, indie game, prototype. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that, guys.
You drive a very good point there that, it's, you can only reinvent the wheel so many ways before it's just not really a copy and paste, but just a almost hard copy of what is already been around.
Well, think of how many times you look at a game and what do you do almost immediately? You compare it to a past game you played. Oh, it looks just like this. A new shooter comes out. Ah, looks just like Call of Duty. Looks just like Battlefield. You got a brand new. You think of anything in general, you're looking at something, you're like, oh, yeah, I played this game and it reminds me of this, you know? Whether game developers like it or not, because some don't like being compared to others. Like, no, my game's special, and come on, get out of here. You drew inspiration
Right.
from somewhere,
Yeah. I
and
mean,
the gamers
even
are going to
with
find that.
yeah, even with like the Precinct. We've mentioned that a couple of times this podcast, but that was kind of like unique. It's a little bit different, but guess what? It's also GTA where you're the cop. It's just there's so many similarities amongst these games now. It's kind of hard to have something that's 100% original. When The Legend of Zelda came out, there was no game like The Legend of Zelda, right? When Pac-Man came out, there was no game like Pac-Man. When Super Mario Brothers came out, there was nothing else like Super Mario Brothers. And same thing with Sonic, and same thing with Final Fight, and because these are the button mashers. Ring King, it was a boxing game for Nintendo. They didn't have boxing games like that. They had Punch Out, which was different but inspired by one another. But as you continue to rinse and repeat and build up, especially now where we have millions of developers, and sometimes your game's never going to see the light of day. But how can every game be unique from one another? It's impossible. To your point, Neumatix, I think you are 100% on point, that you're drawing inspiration from somewhere, and I don't care who you are.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. 100% on that. And it's fun. I mentioned earlier that there wasn't another game that reminded me of Pokemon, but I gotta take that back. I'm a liar, guys. I completely fibbed on that. Moonstone Island is a game that's very much like Pokemon that I've talked about. And funny enough, because we're talking about it right now, the genre fusions and retro and all that, it's a game that looks retro because it's a 2D aspect, top down. And it's not just a game that reminds me of Pokemon, but it has deck building built into it. So that game's got a little bit of everything. And I'm curious if it didn't. It's a big game. Don't get me wrong. It's a big game. But I'm curious if it didn't do as big just because it did mash so many things together. People are afraid. Let's be real here. People are afraid of change. So they're more likely to go to things that remind them of something, not to things that don't remind them of anything. And to your point, Maz, too, it's like, can you imagine back in the day when the developers of The Legend of Zelda were making the game, they were just like, there's nothing to base this game off. There's nothing to draw inspiration off. We're just taking a story and bring it to life in a game, and we're hoping to God it works. Can you imagine the typical game developer trying to do that today? I'm sure some do try, but yeah, it's like,
I just don't feel like there's anywhere to go with it. Unless somebody like just completely breaks the mold and they create a new genre. But how do you do that? I mean, we're literally over 40 years into game development now and evolution.
Dude, you put it that way. It's like, it doesn't seem like it's that long, but well, if you really think about it, we haven't been into it that long. And we're already coming at a point where it's like, what's new? What's gonna be new? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, the first Atari released in June of 1972. Okay, but I think Atari, who's really got to put games on the map. I mean, you got the Commodore 64, everything like that ahead of that, but in the ColecoVision and all that crap. But the 2600, it was rebranded in September of 1977. That's when things really started to take off. But Atari is also the one that's responsible for almost killing the game industry, right?
Yeah.
And they did that with E.T. We talked about this in an episode. Maybe we should get into it at some point. But, I mean, I don't know if it doesn't really fit in with the indies, but, I mean, it definitely is a very, very pivotal and important moment in gaming history that they hyped that up more than anything. They sunk lots of money in that, even to the point where they had Steven Spielberg, who was the original director of the movie E.T., endorsing the game. I mean, this is how big and how much money they put into it. It was one of the biggest flops ever, and there were like thousands of copies in a landfill somewhere. And that was like supposed to like kill the gaming industry. And then 1985, the Nintendo Entertainment System came out and saved everybody. And that's 40 years ago this year that the Nintendo came out, which is just scary. It's crazy. And it's not a long time in history, but it's a very long time for the life of the gaming industry. A lot of time to evolve. And I think it really hit, I think indie developers and the popularity and the rise of indie games is really why we are where we are now. You've got these innovative games. You've got the Elder Scrolls franchise. You've got the Fallout franchise. You've got the Pokemon franchise. You've got Mario. These are the standout prolific gods of the industry, if you will. But it was the indie developers that have really pushed the evolution of games, and in rapid succession too. We're talking a 10-year time frame where indie games have really made a really big indelible mark on the industry, and have also, I mean, look at going back to the beginning of our podcast here, Hollow Knight Silksong. Look what it did. We had a shadow drop back in April for the Oblivion remake, and that didn't break down Steam. That didn't take anything out. It was an indie game that did it, to your point, and that's pretty remarkable. We're pushing the industry, but it's hard to kind of tie it back. It's really hard for us to be able to create genres when we've pretty much recreated them all already.
Yeah, that's why I think it's so hard to find even subgenres coming out that really hit the mark with people. Do you think, and I don't know, I wonder if a new type of genre came out or a new type of game came out that was, it's hard to think about in general, but if you try and fathom a game that's different from all the others, that's brand new, do you think, I don't know. It's too vague to ask. Oh, I don't know. If I would love for our listeners to chime in on this too. Is if there was a game that came out that completely was different from all the others, do you think it would do well? And I think it's too vague of an answer, too vague of a question to answer, honestly, as I was trying to spit it out to you, everyone here. But
well, I don't think, not only is it to make something completely original and not have any type of inspiration from anything else, and I don't think we're supposed to, right? I think if you do something like that, it's something that happens by accident.
Yeah. Well, think of it this way too, like battle royales in general. There was no such thing as a battle royale. It kind of something triggered, and I think someone within Call of Duty or within Epic were looking at this and looking at a shooter and then looking at the multiplayer and thinking, what else could we do to make this even better? And it probably started out as game mode, and then it turned into its own thing, because people saw the value in it. All of a sudden, you have this new type of game mode that's just destroying. No one else wants to play anything but that.
Absolutely. And then what happened after that? Realm Royale came out. And then what happened after that? 76 came out, and what did they do? They added Nuclear Winter for a while. So it's inspiration begets each other. Going back to the cell phone analogy I was using before, I mean, you get the iPhone in 2007. Everybody loves that. Oh, guess what? Here's the Samsung Galaxy. Great. Here is this, that, and the other thing. Also smartphones. Oh, here's the Google Pixel. Fantastic. And where did that come from? That wasn't original. It was the iPhone that was the original, right? And so what happens next? Well, everybody's doing iPhones. Well, everybody's doing smartphones. Well, Apple comes out with the iPad. Hey, look at this. Here's the Galaxy tab. Here's the Zoom. Here's this. Here's that. It's ridiculous. It's emulated but never duplicated, right? And you only get to be original once. Everybody else is a copycat. I mean, and I think that kind of goes back to what we've been talking about. Improving. I'm going to improve on this. I'm going to do something like this, but I'm going to do this. I'm going to improve on this, right? And I think that's kind of like where the rubber hits the road. And that's why I say, I think to your point, it was like going back to the Fortnite. It was the Fortnite example you were using. That was originally a shooter, an FPS. And it evolved into another mode, and it got wildly successful. We talked about that last week as well. $40 billion in revenue off that one game. or is it
Yeah.
400 billion? I can't remember. I think it was it was four. It's
I think
40
it's
billion.
40.
It was 40. It was 40
Yeah,
billion.
40 billion. And that's just absolutely insane that they stumbled upon that, because it just kind of built up from there. Now, and how are they making it better? Well, we're going to just add skins now. This is how we're making our money. The game is the way that it is. We got our seasons, so they've turned it into an absolute cash cow. And there's a reason why Realm Royale doesn't exist anymore. And there's a reason why Nuclear Winter doesn't exist anymore, because, well, I'll tell you the reason why they don't exist. They didn't improve on the original that came out, and to them, they didn't make enough money. That's what it was. They weren't making enough. They weren't making enough money. And that's the big issue right there.
Cha-ching.
But yeah, it's a popularity thing as well. I mean, we do it right. This is the game loop. People love it, and and you'll notice that we don't have a ton of battle royale games anymore. It's like, yeah, this is, they've established themselves. So let's go do something else.
Yeah. I think you're completely right. Not even, I mean, obviously about the money part, but also about like taking it right back to the whole idea behind retro revivals, right? The fact that Nuclear Winter doesn't exist and Realm Royale doesn't exist is because they came out, they saw the potential, right? But they did not innovate on it. They did not make it any better. They just tried to copy paste. Well, if you try to do that with an indie game, if the indie game just goes, I like Pokemon. Well, I mean, besides getting sued by Nintendo, I like Pokemon. I'm going to copy and paste. I'm going to do everything the same. I'm just going to name all of the animals different, and that's how it's going to be, you know? Do you really think people are going to play that? Or are they going to go and play the better version of that? I'm obviously going to play the better version. They're going to go to Pokemon, you know? So it's like Realm Royale. I love Realm Royale more than Fortnite, but more people love Fortnite than Realm. So are they going to go and play the knockoff? Or are they going to play the one that is the better version, as many would think? Obviously, I'm still trying to state, yeah, it's not what I thought, but many people flock to Fortnite.
What made you like Realm more than Fortnite?
I liked Realm more than Fortnite because of the mechanics behind it, behind being turned into it's funny, the simple mechanic of being turned into a chicken, and you had a chance of coming back, and the fun behind it, because you got your buddies, like even if you did a duo, right? You got chicken, you're like, cover me, cover me, cover me, and you're like, your buddies trying to chase them down to chicken them before you get taken out by them, and then you come back, and it's like the whole redemption. So like did improve it. It wasn't just a copy paste. They did improve upon it, but I don't know if it was just because Fortnite one had been the big wig all along from the beginning, and that mechanic in Realm wasn't big enough to make a difference. Because Realm, you think about it too, like it didn't just revolve about, and I'm getting off a tangent here, but like it didn't really revolve about the guns and stuff. There was other things to it. You had little side weapons, like you could throw down a concussion bomb. You can have the warrior, his main weapon was an axe. You know, the hunter was a bow. So there was many different aspects to the game than just picking up the next RNG weapon out of a chest and shooting your enemy from afar or whatever and taking them out and headshots. There was more to it, more strategy to it. But like I said, in the end, maybe it also had to do with it was too much. Maybe it was too complicated. People were probably more interested in picking up a game that just revolved around trying to take the guy out with a gun, because you think about maybe most of the players came from that Call of Duty or Battlefield area, jumping into Fortnite, and then them finding that easier to work around and play than Realm, because Realm really was something new. It was kind of copy paste, but a lot of it was new mechanics behind it that were a bit more complicated. So I think that actually might be a really good example of something that was a bit overboard in terms of not completely copy pasting, but it not working out in their favor, and the more simple mechanic worked out for Fortnite and got players to jump in on it because their nostalgia was more Call of Duty, any kind of shooter from their backgrounds, you know.
I agree with that. I mean, it's simplicity at that point. You just mentioned it yourself. The only difference is like the complication comes in with the base building, right? You got to have the materials but that wasn't too hard to do either. You just kind of pick the blueprint and you just hit the button and it would build for you. But
Right.
I agree. Maybe they overcomplicated it. But I enjoyed watching you play Realm better than watching anybody else play Fortnite. I mean, and I'll only watch people play Fortnite if they're in my circle of friends. It's not something that I'm looking for, and I appreciate it when people don't play it. But it's one of those. Maybe it was overcomplicated. I love the chicken idea because it's another chance, and I think that kind of maybe overcomplicated things to your point.
Right.
You know, I want to play a Realm Royale. I want to play a Battle Royale game, and if I kill you, that's it. I don't want to have to I don't want to have to kill you again. You know?
Yeah.
So I think that could have taken from that as well.
So yeah, like on the Battle Royale thing, I don't know if any of y'all ever played Apex.
Yeah. I played Apex.
So that game started out so big because it had the Titanfall movements and stuff, and Titanfall had such a big following. I feel like, Realm Royale, I played it like a couple times. I feel like it was like trying a lot of new things, and a lot of people weren't, all for that. They were like, they tried to stick to what they knew and stuff that they had played before, and they're like, I don't know if I want to take my time to try out this game too. That could be one of the things that hurt it, was like you said, it just overloaded it too much type thing.
Yeah, I think you're right, man. Which sucks because I love that.
I played it a couple times with a few friends of mine, but like I don't know, I never could get into it like the other ones. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, I think maybe it was just because I always had at least 2 to 3 people to play it with. And whenever I streamed it, I always had plenty of people trying to jump in. And obviously with with battle royales, that's the most fun, is when you have people to play with, So that could have been why I didn't have. I mean, I had a couple people that wanted to play Fortnite, but we talked about this before, where it's so stupid, where like a big game comes out and my brain just automatically goes, no, I'm not playing that. Everyone's playing that. I'm not playing that. I'm going to play something else. It's not, I don't know why my brain does that, but
I tend to go against trends myself, so don't feel bad.
Yeah, I don't know why, man, but yeah, I do think, but it's funny. I mean, I know Kronos just loves Rocket League here, but this is
yeah, it's the best game ever.
So I bring this up because I think it's funny, right? We're talking about game devs trying to go outside the box and make something that you cannot think of something else coming before it, right? And Realm Royale kind of gives that vibe in a sense, but it's still copy paste of a battle royale, right? And Rocket League is one of those. Would you ever think a genre mash, a genre fusion of cars and soccer would have ever done well? Me personally, no way. I would have been like, you're kidding me. That is a dumb idea. Don't even go for it. But then I'd be bad on myself for saying that, because based off of that, someone somewhere, I mean, I don't remember who the developer is behind that, but they went, I really like soccer games and I really like racing games. I want to try and mash them. I want to see what happens. This could be fun. It's like, who thinks of that, But that's why I always think for indie devs, it's always a great idea to think outside the box and never think that something's a dumb idea, because it could be the next big breakout. Would you guys agree with that?
Oh yeah, like, because it's all like we've said before too. All it takes is just that one little thing to take off, and the next thing you know, you have the next big hit.
Exactly. Yeah, man. So cool. All right, then, guys. We went over a bit of stuff when it comes to retro revivals and getting off in tangents here and there. It's been great. Been very good. Very good conversations have been had. But I think we have time to jump into the poll of the night. What do you guys think? Should we just go ahead and round that up?
Nah.
The poll.
Okay.
Oh,
All
well,
right, we're done, guys. You guys have a great night. So over on Discord, as we usually do, we went ahead and put up a poll for everyone. And the poll went, which retro game genre needs more indie love and revivals? Your options were point and click adventures, real-time strategies, rhythm games, or isometric RPGs. Well, I was going through all these, and well, before I mention mine, what was yours, Kronos? What was your choice?
I picked RTS
Really?
because
Okay.
I've played a couple real time strategy games, and I mean I had some fun with them, and I'm like, those older games need some more love. But I mean, personally, I was thinking about doing other and adding in, like turn based. But then I was like, no, RTS games, I do would like to see those get some more love too. So I just kept it with what you had on the options. And
Nice, man. I like both of those. Yeah, I like both of those for sure. I myself chose RTS as well, surprisingly. For me, I feel point and click. I was like, I don't really care, whatever, for point and click, to be honest. Isometric RPGs, I think we have a lot of isometric RPGs that have been replicated, duplicated, revived in general, and have been shown a lot of love. Rhythm games, I love myself some rhythm games, but I love like Guitar Hero and Rock Band. And I just think that'd be really, really hard unless you're just doing it with like a piano style on the keys for some kind of indie game coming out for that. I'm sure there could be way more with that, but that was my personal opinion on it. So RTS, yeah, man. I mean, I would like to see more love for this, more revival off of the RTSs because I played a lot of Halo Wars. I played a lot of
yep,
geez. Yeah,
that's
yeah.
exactly what I was thinking. Halo Wars. I'm sorry, I reverted back to Halo.
No, dude. Yeah, Halo Wars. I love that game. Me and my
Or
buddies played that all the time.
the older ones, the Age of Empires.
Yeah, I never played Age of Empires, but I played, what was it called? Rise of Nations. Rise of Nations. I don't know if you heard about that one. It wasn't even on a console. It was just like, hey, just like Dragon's Lair. It was on a disc that you put into your computer and played. And I played, dude, I remember playing that. And the problem with RTSs, man, is that they take forever. Like you play one round, it's been 2 hours later, and you're like, holy crap. Like, I need to go eat dinner, you know? So I would love to see more RTSs getting some love in the indie scene. But what did you pick, Maz?
Actually went with isometric RPGs.
Wow.
What?
Yeah. I am a lover of the RPGs as big surprise, but
Surprise.
it's funny. We were talking about it earlier. I love isometric. It's not very popular with a lot of people. It makes people sick. It doesn't fit. I enjoy them. I've always enjoyed isometric games, but I don't. And maybe I'm wrong. I mean, there's this game that I did a showcase stream on. I haven't released it yet. I need to because it's pretty cool. It is called Night Swarm, and that was a really cool. That's not really an RPG per se. It's got some RPG elements. It's more of a bullet hell, but beautifully done, isometric. And I want to see more of those. I've seen more isometric games. I've seen more pixel art games than anything else recently. But isometric and RPG together, that's something I'd like to see a little bit more of.
Nice, man. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, with showing some more love to the genre that you love, you know? I mean, I'll be honest, wouldn't mind that myself after our last episode where we both mentioned Final Fantasies and our most collected games.
Yeah,
so
man.
we're in the same boat when it comes to that. But yeah, honestly, I was debating between RTS and rhythm games. But like I said, going back to it, rhythm games, I mean, this is a part where like if you think outside the box and you do something new for people, I think this would be a very good genre to jump into for someone to make a big scene of. But I don't know how you would do that without, like, because I remember playing rhythm games, and I'm talking about, like I said, Guitar Hero, Rock Band, and I love those games, man. I still have the guitar sitting down in the next room to me. I still have the drum set, and I have the PlayStation 2 upstairs if I ever want to hook it up. It's funny thinking about it. I'm like, man, I think when I put this poll up, I was thinking about that. I'm like, man, it'd be cool if I could just like hook it up and jam out a little bit. It's just, it's so much to get it all upstairs and do that, so, but I don't think I was alone in that either because we had some love in it in the comments below. But before I do that, let's get the results. So the results came through with 60% of the votes going for RTS, and then a good tie, 20% for isometric and 20% for point and click. Point and click kind of surprised me, but I do understand some of the listeners probably voting for that because, I mean, what other point and click games? Maybe because I don't play them enough. Maybe that's why I don't really look into them or even know of any. So, but yeah, not totally surprised, kind of surprised by the votes, but like I said, we got some comments down below. Yemi the Ferret, the good old Yemi, the legend himself. He goes, I feel like I barely see any point and click games. Could always use some more rhythm games though. Got them eyes looking. Get them eyes looking. Yeah, man. And of
You know,
course, go ahead, Kronos.
I was to say, based off of how he answered the question about like, what type of games he had, I'm gonna say he's thinking the same thing you did on Guitar Hero.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, man. Could always use more. That's why I met. And if anyone, any of our listeners, like I said, if you want to join the Discord and chime in on this stuff, I mentioned I love me some rhythm games, and Maz even put in there. I feel like point and click has gravitated largely to mobile, and I agree with that tenfold.
Yeah, it makes sense that it's there. I mean, some of the older point and click games, you can't think of any off the top of your head. Some of them are classics. You got to look back to the 90s and the early 2000s to really think of some really solid, classic point and click games. Some of them I love dearly. I am not a point and click fan, but these games, again, nostalgia, retro, 2D. I'm talking about LucasArts games, Sam & Max series, Sam & Max Hit the Road. It's a point-and-click type game. You collect things with your point-and-click. You solve mysteries. You have to use items on different things to click later on in levels. Grim Fandango, another LucasArts game. They even did a LucasArts game for Indiana Jones point-and-click in that same time frame. And then there is, of course, the Monkey Island series, which I'm sure you guys have both heard of. Escape from Monkey Island, Legend of Monkey Island.
Yeah.
Also, incredible point-and-click games, but not really my cup of tea this day and age, especially where, my comment in the Discord is that they've largely gravitated to mobile, which gets into another one of my hot buttons. It's like, hey, this is an ad machine with a splash of gaming, and that just doesn't work for me. And I am not gripped enough by point-and-click games, today's point-and-click games, because those ones that I was just mentioning back in the 90s, incredible storylines, gripping, funny, entertaining, not like you see today. And so I'll pass.
Boo. Boo. Ads.
That's right. Screw them ads.
Boo. Yeah, no, I agree, dude. And it's funny over there in the Discord, Nihilate goes, yeah, point and click and rhythm, which I'm assuming he's talking about both of those genres, mainly over on mobile, which is, yeah, unfortunate. Unfortunate. I would love to see
rhythm games are so expensive, though. And I'm not talking about just for the consumer, but for the developer as well. I mean, the Guitar Hero series, the Rock Band series, awesome. But to have to expect people to buy a peripheral like that nowadays, I mean, think about how many gamers there are compared to when that came out, 15 years ago. It's just it's not cost effective this day and age to have a whole freaking fake band set up in your house, right? Where I got a couple of guitars, but I'll tell you, if I ever get the itch so bad, I will find a console and I will find guitars and I will find that game to do that. I mean, with the advent of Roblox, where you can create your own games, and indie developers where you can just use the arrow keys on your keyboard. That's much more practical. But then you get all that copyright crap that you have to deal with, and all the red tape that these developers have to go through to be able to use these songs to put them in. I mean, it's only helping them out, but it's just not it's not economically viable, I don't believe, at this point.
Yeah, no, you're right, man. It's funny looking back. Like Rock Band, when it initially released, was between $170 and $250.
Right.
That was
and what's that now, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, we don't have our inflation calculator up, but yeah, because
yes, we do.
Oh crap! Yeah, we do. Okay, so
we got Mez. We got Mez.
We got Mez on the keyboard on standby. So back in 2007, Rock Band launched with around $170 to $250. Now that, I believe, is because if you guys remember, I would always walk by it whenever I'd go to Walmart, and I walk by the aisle, just kind of staring it down, like, yeah, I'm gonna get you one day. Don't you worry, I'll be right there. One day I'll buy you. And I didn't, you know how it goes today. We don't want second tier, we want top tier. So I didn't want just the $170 bundle that came with one guitar or maybe two guitars and the mic stand. I wanted the full bundle with the drum set, the two guitars, the mic, everything. And yeah, I mean, that was a lot. I got it, but I mean, that was expensive back then.
It was just like all the extra add-on songs too. It was like, yeah, I'm gonna get these. I'm gonna play all these songs, you know. And it's like you just had to buy them.
Buy this DLC, you'll get this track.
Yeah, that was the nice thing about it being on, PlayStation 2 at the time. This is before PlayStation 3 where they didn't do that crap. This is your list of games, and there's more. This is your list of songs, rather, and there are more songs if you can beat these other songs. And they had an incredible catalog. They had Guitar Hero 2, which had friggin' Freebird on it, guys. Come on, And then you got 3 that had, Through the Fire and Flames. It had
three was my favorite.
It was my favorite too, brother. And then they came out with Aerosmith, and they came out with the 80s. I mean, they had all kinds. They were all their own packs. It was kind of like DLC, right? Because you're just buying the damn thing, but you'd have to buy the guitar over and over again. But to give, just for our fun little exercise, just so you guys know, here on the Indie Hangout podcast, the inflation calculator is always available, okay? Just so y'all know. In 2007, we're looking at $170 to $250, right? 2007, since 2007, we've had a 55.8% increase in inflation. So that's, the range is between $264 and $389.
Oh my God.
Goodness, that's insane.
Wow. Yeah.
Not economically viable. Nobody's spending $400 on a friggin' guitar.
No.
Unless it's a guitar.
Yeah, that's insane, man. Well, we may not be seeing any more rhythm games like that anytime soon, but we sure will see some knockoff ones that you click around on your phone through the App Store. Boo. All right. Well, that about wraps it up for this episode, guys. That's about it. We ended it off on a good note there. So I would love for our
No pun
listeners to know.
intended, right?
Yeah. You like what I did there?
I didn't catch it.
That was a good knee slap, brother.
I see what you did there. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brain's catching up now. I'm like,
No.
oh, wait.
I love it, dude. Oh my gosh. Well, if our listeners would love to join in on the conversations with us, be sure to join the Discord, as I said. And I would love to also remind our listeners that we release episodes every Thursday at 5 a.m. Central Time, 6 a.m. Eastern Time. And until next time, we will catch you guys later. Bye.
That's a wrap.
See you later.